Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Ed Block CourageCast. We are live. We are back. The crew is here. This is going to be a lot of fun this week on this podcast. I'm your host, Dave Steinwedel, back after a week off, celebrating birthday on my end. So our thanks to Wally and Brett for holding down the fort. Wally will join us a little bit later on in this podcast, but I got my guys, former NFL defensive lineman with the Bengals, the Vikings, and the Kansas City Chiefs. That would be my guy. Duane Clemons is here. DC, great to see you, sir.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate the intro. Love y'all. Miss you. It's always too long every week having to wait for this time again.
That's right. This is a highlight of our weeks, to say the least. We really enjoy doing this pod. We got a great pod in store for you with a couple great guests. But DC, we haven't had this guy on in a while. Our co-host, former athletic trainer in the NFL with the Baltimore Ravens and the New Orleans Saints. He's a current athletic trainer at a high school. That would be our guy. Duane Brooks is back. He is here. It is great to see you, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm excited, man. It's great to be back. It's been a few weeks, well, longer than that, but I missed you guys, and it's great to be back.
Well, let's get a life update here before we kind of tease out what this podcast is. By the way, voice is not great. Little sinus trouble. So if it sounds like I'm dying, I'm okay. I just it just ain't there. But DB, give me the life update. It's been a while.
Man, I'm fresh off of FAMU's homecoming this past weekend. I got my Rattler shirt on, so I'm representing. Everything is great. My foot is healing up great. I can't complain about that. My volleyball team is in the playoffs, so I can't complain about that. My wife's great. My kids are great. So everything is fine. You know, I still have a little homecoming in my system that I haven't gotten out yet. So I'm pretty sure Wally does too, and he'll share that with you when he joins the pod later.
How's the recovery been from homecoming week? Because I saw the pictures. You went hard.
Yeah, you're right, of course. And yeah, that's the only way to go. You got to go hard in the paint. And it's homecoming. That's the whole, that's the whole premise behind it. And I had my road dog. I had Wiley with me, so he was going hard as well. And we had a great time. It was great hanging out. Great
that's
game.
A great picture.
Great game. Will be, put the whooping on Texas Southern. And we had a great weekend.
Did Wiley put you on his shoulders and carry you around like KC used to, like Jodeci used to do back in the day?
No, none of that. He didn't do any of that. That's funny though.
I know you put on a show out there.
Ooh. Well, we had a blast. Having access to a lot of stuff on game day helps.
I know that's right.
And so it was a great time. It was a great time. This is my third year in a row. I used to not be able to do this because of schedule conflicts, working, with the Saints or working with the Pelicans or what have you. I never had the opportunity to do homecoming. So the past few years I've had the opportunity, and I'm gonna make it an annual thing.
You got to, man. Anytime you get a chance to fellowship with your people, you got to get out there.
That's right. That's right. And it's no homecoming like FAMU's homecoming. You hear a lot of stuff here and there.
I think we got to get invited next year. That's what I.
You know what? We should be able to do a cast from live in Tallahassee.
Ooh.
Done. That day.
Yeah. Here, twist my arm a little bit and tell me that we're doing this.
We should do that, and it'll be a great experience. Trust me. We can get some good guests on there.
Oh yeah, I can't wait to come experience that. I ain't never been to a real homecoming like that.
Oh man, woo.
All right.
Yes.
We got a great podcast in store for you this week. Allen Robinson, longtime NFL wide receiver, currently with the Detroit Lions, sat down, went one-on-one with Brett to talk about his career, all his work off the field, in the community, one of the bright spots in the NFL in terms of that, a former Ed Block recipient. And we get a chance here in a little bit to talk with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, the fourth-year wide receiver from the Tennessee Titans, will join us to talk about being a recipient. He's had a pretty decent year down there in Tennessee. It's been a little tough going for the Titans as a whole. We'll talk with him about how that season's going and a lot more. But we have a lot to get to on this podcast. We are going to step aside real fast for a PSA from the Ed Block Courage Award Foundation, and then you're going to hear the entire Ed Block interview Brett did one-on-one with Allen Robinson right now.
All right, welcome in. I am here with two-time Courage Award recipient, Jacksonville Jaguars 2015, 2019 with the Chicago Bears, Allen Robinson. Obviously not a, we know here at the Ed Block Courage Award Foundation that it's not normally an award that you want to win, but for somebody winning it twice, it's got to be somewhat special, recognizing that two different teams picked you for the Ed Block Courage Award.
Definitely, I think that's the special part about it is, being able to have the impact of, showing the ability to come back and handle adversity, going through an injury. Obviously injuries in this league happen so often, but they aren't easy at all. Some injuries are a lot bigger than others. Actually both of the injuries that I did have were pretty significant, injuries that I had to have surgery for, injuries that, took some time to come back from, that put me out for the current season that I was involved in, so it wasn't easy. So to be able to be honored by my teammates, chosen by the teammates and coaches and voted for, by my peers, I think those are some of the most special awards in this league, are the ones, that are voted on by your peers.
Yeah, and you look back at that, and obviously we're talking, 2015. So a little bit way back, you look at that first experience, you win that award, and the emotions and how you felt there. Was it any different the second time around from the first time around, or was it kind of the same reaction that you had, when it was Jaguars and Bears?
Actually, I would say it probably was a little bit more special for me the second time around. The second time around, I was coming off of a pretty significant injury. And I remember, the trials and tribulations of going through that injury, just how long it took, the adversity of going to rehab and stuff every day. At that time that I suffered the injury, going into Chicago, I was coming upon a free agent, when I actually got injured, so to be able to go to Chicago and kind of finish my rehab there and just be able to come back from it, it was big, it was something that, because when you win an award like that, I thought back to all the times where I'm on the training table, the days where the grind of coming back off an injury are very gruesome, very tough, they aren't easy. And I thought about those times, and the injury that I had the second time was a little bit more significant than the first time around. Again, not to diminish the first time around at all, but it was a real honor, and it was one of those things that, I was thankful for the training staff that we had to be able to get me back on the field. I also had to give a little bit of grace to myself, being able to, indulge in the rehab each and every day and staying locked in and committed to getting back on the field and to being 100%.
All right, and you look back at it now. You got two trophies. Do you have them somewhere special? Are they displayed together? Are they in separate rooms? What are we doing with those trophies that you have?
So I have them both at my parents' house.
Gotcha.
And for me, moving around to a couple of teams and things like that, those are two trophies that I didn't want to be moved around. That I wanted to be pretty stationary and have a place that they could live, and not be bounced around. So a lot of my most memorable things, like my last college jersey, some of my college awards and different things like that are at my parents' house, so that's where both of those are, sitting nice there.
That's a smart idea. Let mom and dad take care of them things until you finally hang it up and settle down a little bit. But, obviously still going, have been able to kind of, keep the career going for the past couple of years, and end up back in your hometown in Detroit. And, the team is, having probably the most successful run it's might have ever had. And you're now officially a part of that. Why was it important to you to go back to Detroit, kind of where it all started for you, way back in the day?
I had always thought, and people always asked, would I ever end up back in Detroit? That was my parents, whenever free agency would come around and some of my family and friends and things like that, and I always thought that, whenever that time would come, it wouldn't be forced and it would be a special time, and right after training camp this year, when I got released from the Giants, I got the call from Detroit, and it was a very special opportunity. Again, being able to step into this culture, step into this environment, it's been special, and I think everything happens for a reason, and I think that, just like I told my parents, I never forced it. I knew that the right time would come, and sure enough, this year, being able to step into the locker room with a great group, being able to be around a great coaching staff, and a great culture, who goes about everything the right way, and I'm very glad to be here, and it's special, and I don't take those things for granted, not only being back home in Detroit and being able to play for the pride of the city and of this organization, but again, like I said before, the most important thing is the coaches and players that we have in this building.
All right, now you gotta be honest with me. You're playing around the league. You're in LA. You were in Chicago. Did any little part of you kind of still root for the Lions, even though you're on a different team, or is it something that now that you're back in Detroit, you can finally embrace it?
Well, now that I'm back in Detroit, I can embrace it. Being in Chicago when you're going up against this team, twice a year, I don't think any bit of you can kind of root for another team in your division. You're at battle, against those teams. But again, being back here, like I said before, it's special. Again, growing up in the city of Detroit, being able to see just the trials and tribulations of just the city of Detroit, and how it's overcame a lot and how it's grown over the past years, which is very similar to the Detroit Lions, and at the same time, my dad worked for Ford all my life, so he would come to work, sometimes when he would bring me to work or bring me to his office, it was right across the street from the Lions facility in Dearborn. So I always, I never got a chance to go to the Lions facility, but I knew where it was at, and so on and so forth, so it's very special, this area, where our facility is in, and everything like that, because it brings back a lot of memories from when I was younger, just kind of being around this area, seeing my dad, go to work every day, at Ford Motor Company, so on and so forth. So it's special, and it's a lot of, little things, that I cherish, being back here.
All right, with a good transition there, and we're going to get into some questions from the kids here, from the Courage House here in Baltimore, St. Vincent's Villa. And the first one I always ask is, who was your biggest inspiration growing up? Obviously, you've shown a lot of inspiration in your life, overcoming adversity. Winning this award is all about that inspiration and being a role model to some kids in need across the Courage House network. But who was that person for you growing up?
Two people come to mind for me, and it's tough to decide between the two, but I would say my dad definitely, and also my cousin Kevin Glenn. He played in the CFL for I think 18 seasons at quarterback. So I grew up when I was about 5 or 6, being able to go to his games. I remember being a little kid and at family gatherings and family events, tossing the ball with my cousin. It was such a special thing, and I wanted to follow in his footsteps, in some form, at that young age, I didn't know where the game of football could possibly take me, but seeing my cousin, reach the level, and even for me, it wasn't the NFL, but it was the CFL, and I just knew how much it meant to him being able to play professionally, and come back and kind of inspire some of his cousins and so on and so forth, to then be a big inspiration for me to be able to get to the NFL. I always thought that was cool, and, being able to be a youngster as he's coming back around, and, him talking to me and spending time with me as a kid, went a long way for me.
Yeah. All right. Next question from the kids, and this one might get a little tougher for you. Go-to karaoke song.
Go-to karaoke song. Ooh, that's tough.
Told you.
I'll have to think a little bit about that. That's tough. Can I get some time to think about that one?
Yeah. We'll come back to it. I'm going to circle back to it.
Okay,
all right.
perfect.
Favorite flavor of ice cream?
Chocolate. Chocolate.
Chocolate.
And ironically, I don't really like actual chocolate that much, like actual chocolate bars and chocolate candy, but I really do like chocolate ice cream.
There you go. There you go.
I think, and I also like chocolate milk. So I think those are
yeah, that's the milk combination, I guess.
Yeah.
Makes it. Yeah. All right. You're been around the league a long time now. You've played up against some great players. Who is that one matchup that you get the most excited for, or the one matchup that you look back on and we're most pumped to go up against a guy? I'm guessing it's probably going to be a defensive back of some sorts. Is there somebody that stands out to you that that calendar comes out?
Definitely.
You look at the schedule. Who's that guy?
Well, the one that I always think about whenever I kind of think about my career and some of the matchups that really inspired me. When I say inspired me to be better, that I immediately reflect to is going up against Darrelle Revis. Actually, that was in 2015 season. We played against the Jets. I was in Jacksonville. Going up against him, he lined up across from me every single snap of the game. And as a young player, watching Darrelle Revis and watching him cover some of the greatest players of all time, Randy Moss, Chad Johnson, just some guys to that come to mind, and to then finally be in the NFL and have him matching me and him being my matchup for the entire game, was very special. And also I had a pretty good game that game, which also felt really good as well. And we end up exchanging jerseys after the game. Awesome. So I have a Darrelle Revis jersey in my house. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't think he's in the Hall of Fame yet, but I know he'll probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So to be able to go against him, was a pretty special honor. Yeah,
that's amazing. And you said it, as a young guy going in, and that's the ultimate sign of respect, is when one of the best cornerbacks of all time has to follow you around.
Yeah, and they followed me, literally every single snap. There wasn't a snap that I was lined up that Darrelle Revis wasn't in front of me.
Is there any point in that moment in that game do you remember back of like, come on, give me a break? Can I get somebody else out here?
I actually remember I think either he had a pass breakup or maybe an interception early in that game, and I came back to the sideline just a little frustrated, and my receiver coach was just like, hey, just listen, like that is Darrelle Revis. It's a long game, it'll be a long 4 quarters, but just continue to stay locked in, keep going, and ultimately I end up having a pretty good game. I think I had 6 or 7 catches for 120 yards. So it was a big day for me.
Yeah, not a lot of people do that against Darrelle Revis. So that's definitely, you keep that one close to the chest. All right. Looking at your career, you make it to the NFL. You've been able to kind of take care of yourself, take care of your family, sign big free agent contracts. But is there one purchase that you've had since you've been in the NFL? It doesn't have to be the biggest, doesn't have to be the flashiest, but one purchase that kind of looks back to you that's kind of your favorite thing that you've been able to afford yourself since becoming a professional football player?
That's a really tough question as well. I may not say actual purchase, but what I will say is when I was in Chicago and we had our foundation going, being able to put reading rooms inside of boys and girls clubs in the inner city of Chicago was pretty special. It was something that we had set out as a foundation early on when I was in Jacksonville. And ultimately we weren't able to get that done in Jacksonville, but being able to do that in Chicago and have very nice reading spaces and workspaces and a great collection of books for the boys and girls clubs that we did that for in Chicago, it was special and it was an honor. It was just a true testament of the work that the foundation had put in, us being able to really get that done. It was fun. The kids loved it, so that's one thing that when I think about, when it comes to time, energy, resources, and things like that I really, put some time into, those things come to mind.
That's amazing. And then you love to hear those stories of being able to give back. And, I followed your career, and I remember us on our social media and me posting the articles about you doing those. So that's a, really cool throwback to something that, when I first started here and got to see some of those things that you guys were doing in the community, and what got me hooked in working with the foundation long-term as well. All right, I'm going to circle back to you now. You got to give me a good answer now. Go to karaoke song.
I thought about it. Yo by Chris Brown.
All right, I love it. I love it. All right, I'm gonna take two more questions for you, and they're gonna be a little bit personal. First, from Detroit, you're back in Detroit now. Played a good chunk of your career in Chicago. Detroit style pizza, Chicago deep dish. Which one are you?
Oh, that's easy. Detroit style. Any day of the week.
There
Any
you
day
go.
of the week.
All right, all right. Now, in honor of Penn State having their whiteout game coming up this weekend, I'm actually attending my first whiteout game. Just had to experience it for myself. So I need to know you're going back to your college career. Would you rather play whiteout game at Penn State or conference championship game in Detroit? Which one are you picking?
Oh, that's tough.
Told you, I'm going to throw some hard ones at you.
Ooh. I gotta go conference championship. When you get into that stage of and those heightened games, it's nothing more special than those. I think about some divisional games that I've played in and different things like that. Those games, that's what you live for and playing. Again, although, Penn State is very special and dear to my heart, I gotta go with the conference championship.
All right, there you go. There he is. Allen Robinson, two-time Courage Award recipient, one of the few players in NFL history to win the Ed Block Courage Award twice. We certainly appreciate you taking a couple minutes to chat with us. Good luck the rest of the season, and looking forward to watching those lines. They're very excited to follow from the outside, even as not a fan of the team, but just enjoy watching them on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays in every game that you guys play in.
I appreciate it, man. It's been an honor being an award winner.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Ed Block CourageCast. Our thanks to longtime NFL wide receiver Allen Robinson for joining us here on the Ed Block CourageCast. Our thanks to Brett Dickinson for handling that, a true professional in Brett's regard. Dave Steinwedel, DC, DB, back here with you. We got a little bit of NFL talk that we're going to fill some time with until we are joined by Titans wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Ikhine here on the pod. So let's dive into this question. DC, former Chief player, big time Chiefs fan over here. The Chiefs are 7-0, and I want to ask you this question, DC, and this is not as a knock, but you watch Kansas City, and the prevailing theme, if you listen to the media and you talk to people that have watched the games, is that Kansas City seems to be a lucky team this year. As a former player, somebody connected with that organization, what do you make of those comments? And is there any sort of validity maybe to that thought of, hey, they are 7-0, they may not be playing their best football, but they are just finding ways to win games?
I think people have to understand it's not luck. They are like MacGyver. No matter how it has to happen, somehow, some way, they are going to find a way, whether it's Andy Reid making a better decision or Steve Spagnuolo making a better call or the special teams returning a punt. Because, obviously we're not having our best year in terms of production on offense, in terms of, turning the ball over. We're always letting teams kind of put us in a position where we're uncomfortable. We used to be able to blow people out and put them away, but now everybody's kind of like hanging with us. And we know we get everybody's best game. So we have to be MacGyver this year. We got a lot of injuries. We don't have the best protection up front for Pat. Defense has, taken a step back in some areas. We don't have as many stars, losing to Jarius Sneed. So we're just kind of finding a way to kind of make up for those deficits and just in subtle ways. And we're doing just enough to stay ahead of the competition. And it doesn't look cute and it seems like we're just getting lucky, but it's really ingenious how the people up top, Andy and Spags, have been able to kind of always find a way to put a few new players in and interject a few new wrinkles into the offense, whether it's using 3 tight ends to try to make it work. Finding Kareem Hunt on the street, bringing, just no matter who they put in the gumbo, it's still delicious.
That is not expecting that analysis
Right.
at the end of it.
You're right. Wow. Delicious gumbo.
Oh, yeah. That's what we are, baby.
I will say, Kansas, what makes everybody, I think, say that they are so lucky is the offense isn't playing well. And I think that's a fair criticism of Kansas City at this point.
They're
is
not.
offensively, they're not Kansas City that we're used to. They are a lot like the Patriots of those Brady, Belichick eras where, hey, you keep thinking, hey, this is the game they're going to lose. They find a way because they're just that good. I think what makes it hard for fans to understand is Kansas City's defense is actually pretty good this year.
They are. They are.
And it's not flashy football when you are carried by a good defense.
No.
And you're watching Kansas City and you're going, boy, Mahomes looks kind of human. He's making a lot of mistakes, but the defense makes the stops. Now, I do think this is a tall task for Kansas City this week with that Denver defense a little bit, because Kansas City is a little more one-dimensional than the Ravens are.
Yeah.
And look, I know everybody's going to say, well, the Ravens put up 41 on Denver's defense. It's not that good. No, that's a pretty good Denver defense. It's just very hard to stop an offense that can beat you two different ways. And I think in fairness, DC, if you're going to play Kansas City right now, we're going to limit Patrick Mahomes, we're going to limit those wide receivers, and we're going to take away Travis Kelce. I don't think Kansas City's run game without Isaiah Pacheco can win them games.
You don't think Kareem Hunt could win games?
I don't think he can dominate the way, like when you look at some of the other teams like Detroit, where Detroit can hit you with two backs. San Francisco with a healthy Christian McCaffrey. They can win games just running the football. Baltimore can win games just with Derrick Henry. I don't see that with Kansas City's offense this year, to where if Pat Mahomes has an off day and they're able to really limit the passing game, that Kareem Hunt can solely be the offense and lead them to a win. And that's my point. And Denver, if you look at what Denver did to the Ravens in that first half in that game, they took the run away from the Ravens. Derrick Henry only had 40 yards at halftime. Where they got burned was Lamar Jackson just carved them up in the secondary. Now, you're going to go into this game as a defensive coordinator, and you're going to say, okay, what can't we let beat us?
Xavier Worthy and McCall Hardman. You got to take that away off the top.
Right. So you're aiming to take away the passing game from Kansas City, where you're like, okay, if Kansas City has to run the ball, that's to our advantage. We win that matchup if we're Denver. That's where this is a challenge. Now, I still think Kansas City can beat Denver because you still are asking Bo Nix a lot out of him in his rookie year to try to go toe-to-toe with Pat Mahomes. But that's the vulnerability for Kansas City, is they're not a complete offense like they were last year, where if Mahomes has the off day, you have Isaiah Pacheco that can sort of carry the load and be enough.
But that's the beauty, David. We don't really have an offense. We're like, sometimes we're a 3 tight end offense that's throwing little drag routes. Sometimes we're just using Xavier Worthy and McCall to keep them safeties at bay, and just using our 3-headed monster with our centers and our 2 guards who are beasts, and just catching 5-6 yards, making that defense work. And then by the time the fourth quarter comes, that defense is just beat to hell, because those 3 guys are just constantly pushing the pile, getting those 4, 5, 6 yards, and it's ugly. We are playing ugly football. It's not pretty. But on third downs, we are beautiful. We go out there and we might give up the ghost on first and second, and then somehow we find a way to keep you out there on third down to get another down. And it's just enough to keep you off balance so that you got to hang out with us in the fourth quarter, and it's close. And if it's close, we already know Patrick Mahomes is going to do you.
Well, let me ask you this, D.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the question, I'll say even the weak link is the 2 tackles.
Oh my God!
And so how much longer do you think they can hold up as the season progresses, and then we go into the playoffs and that type of thing? How long do you think they can last?
Well, we've already had to go to the running game because of that very fact. Obviously, we know we cannot drop back 7 steps and just pat the ball for 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. You know, we're having to do off-balance stuff, constantly keep the defense honest and keeping those defensive linemen from just teeing off. And then we have to use our backs in the backfield to chip and buy a little time and use our tight ends to chip. But, I mean, Patrick Mahomes seems to figure out he's got this thing where now he's dropping back 7 steps and then stepping up into that 3-step area and just buying himself at least 1,001, 1,002, and then either taking off or dumping it off. So I think he's already making that adjustment because he knows he ain't trying to get hit and get his head taken off because the edges are a little weak.
Let's transition. There was a big coaching news in the NFL this week. The Saints, after a 2-0 start, have lost 7 in a row. DB, this is an organization you worked for. When you look at the Saints, where did this go wrong?
Well, I mean, it's easy to just say, well, they've had a lot of injuries. You know, that would be the logical thing to point the finger at. But they've had, you know, a bunch of injuries the past probably 3 years, maybe 4 years. And you know, like I said in the podcast when we discussed the NFC South, that Coach Allen entered the season on the hot seat. He had to do something really well this season to make a deep playoff run in order to save his job. And that was going to be an uphill climb for him. Even with the 2-0 start, with, you know, which kind of fell apart when the injuries kind of happened. So I'm not sure if it's a strength and conditioning issue. You know, it's not an athletic training issue because athletic trainers don't actually, you know, hurt them. But it could be an issue if they're not getting back in a timely fashion. So I don't know if there's some issues there. It shouldn't be. I know the staff pretty good. They got a great staff there. But it's a lot of different things you can look at, you know. Coach Allen, you know, he hadn't had a very good record as a head coach, not just with the Saints, but when he was with the Raiders as well. So maybe hiring him wasn't really the right move. Who knows? But it'll be interesting to see what they do moving forward.
DC, is it fair to say that maybe the Saints are having a little bit of regret for maybe not moving on from Dennis Allen at the end of the season last year?
I think so because, you know, I think anytime you start over, you got a quarterback and, you know, you have a chance to make a clean sweep. I think it's always better because you don't want them on 2 different timelines where, okay, you know, my head coach is on his way. I've got 1 foot out the door. My quarterback's trying to get settled in, and then you have to possibly make this adjustment again. So it would have been smart to kind of maybe rip the Band-Aid off and just start the whole thing over with a whole new program and a new system. But I know that's expensive, and you know these coaches' contracts are guaranteed, and there ain't no guarantees in the NFL. Winning is hard, and once your quarterback gets hurt, I've always been a little bit lukewarm on Derek Carr. You know, going into the season, I was always lukewarm on him, and then once he got hurt, I mean, it's really, you know, he's definitely not a guy. I think he's like a Patrick Mahomes that can play hurt and still find a way to gut it out and win games for you.
Sorry, watching the Raven game right now as we speak.
Speaking of, Dave, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just think plain and simple, I think the Saints got old on defense very fast. I think that your reliance on that defense wore down. And the other thing is you paid for all the big contracts. They haven't been able to be uber aggressive in free agency. They haven't really been able to rebuild the roster. So you've been trying to kind of hang on the last couple years, and I think it just caught up with the Saints. I think, though, that if you'd ask the Benson family what they would rather do over again, I think no knock on Dennis Allen. I think he's a great defensive coordinator, but there are just guys not made to be head coaches.
Right.
And I think the reality is you probably would have been better off moving on from Dennis Allen last offseason than to try to run it back, see if it would work. It looked like it was going to work. I mean, we were here after they started 2-0 saying, hey, we think this Saints team can be pretty good. And it unraveled because of the injuries. It unraveled because of inconsistent quarterback play. It's just a shame because that's a great city. DB, you know that well. Wally knows it well. Like, it's a great city.
Yes.
Loves their team, and just to see it struggle the way it did. But we've talked about it a little bit, and I truly believe this is the year where you see a lot of teams that are going to maybe regret hanging on to their coach that maybe should have made a head coaching move last offseason. And I just think the Saints were like, okay, we need to cut bait. So I'm going to ask this question before we step aside because we have Nick Westbrook-Ikhine coming up here in a little bit. Is which job right now, because we have 2 NFL openings, the Jets and the Saints. If you're a potential coach, which one's more appealing to you?
Ooh.
I'd rather be down south. That New York media is, ooh. I think I might take the big easy.
I agree. For that alone, I agree.
I think the
And
fan
playing
base is more patient.
indoors, that weather up there, no.
And that conference is a little bit more. I mean, boy, come on, you got to go against Buffalo, Miami. I mean, you that's that AFC North is pretty real.
Right. I agree.
I think you definitely have a better shot to put it together in the AFC South.
The only reason I'm even slightly tempted to take the Jets, though, and say that the Jets are more desirable is because of the salary cap situation for the Saints. They're $67 million over the cap going into next year. Like,
good point.
You're in a tough spot trying to rebuild and retool that roster with that being your salary cap. Essential situation heading into next offseason. Because the reality is you're probably going to need to start thinking about a new quarterback.
What kind of draft capital?
Not a lot, because they've made some trades over the last couple of years that have sort of ate at that draft capital. So you're going to have to really hit on those draft picks. And you look at the top end of the draft and you're like, ooh, there's a lot of really bad records.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, the Saints are 7th or 8th.
Oh, wow. You can't even get in the top 5 and losing.
So, right. I mean, it's a tough rebuild for New Orleans. I don't know. I'm like you guys. I don't know if I'd want to do the New York media, though.
Oh, my God. No, it's too much. That alone would just be like, man, that would just take all the fun out of it. Unless you got a great team, that's got to be the worst job in the world to struggle.
Maybe just a little bit.
Yeah.
Always
that's the gas chamber.
Being the back page of the New York Daily News does not sound like a lot of fun to me.
Oh, no. And then can you imagine walking around New York dealing with New Yorkers? The New Yorkers are special.
All right. We are going to step aside one more time because when we come back, Titans wide receiver, former Ed Block Courage Award recipient, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine joins us next. Welcome back to the Ed Block CourageCast. Dave Steinwedel, DC DB here with you. And joining us now is 2021 Ed Block Courage Award recipient with the Tennessee Titans. That would be Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. And one of the things that you will see from Nick coming up here in a little bit is my cleats, my cause in weeks 13 and 14 of the NFL season. Nick is going to be working with Destiny's Rescue to raise money and awareness for their cause. Nick, kind enough to join us and take some time with us. Nick, how are you doing? How's your body feeling at this stage, week 10 of the NFL season?
Doing well. I feel like it's week 10. We had an early bye, so I really feel like it didn't even week there. And there's still a lot more games to be played, but doing well, in a good spot. You know, the only time you're 100% is that first day of training camp, and that's about it.
Nicholas, this is your 4th year in the league, correct?
5th, yeah.
Oh, 5th year, okay. Oh, man. So you've already been vested. I was going to say, I know getting to that special mark where, you got your 3 years and 3 games, that's always a special time in a player's career. But that was last year for you. I was going to tell you, congratulations on becoming vested. But what are your future goals? I mean, what are you working on the most right now as far as your next contract and where you think you need to do to get there?
Yeah, you know, I'm not really looking ahead to it right now. I feel like that's the best way for me to do it. It's what has worked for me so far. Just working every day and just letting that work results fall as they may. And then maybe at the end of the season we can see what we can negotiate with. It'd be awesome to have something that's not just a 1 year deal. Um, but that's out of my cards right now. It's not really under my control. Um, so yeah, I'm just focused on trying to keep this streak going. It'd be pretty cool if I could keep this touchdown streak going.
Sweet.
So Nick, speaking of your body and it being week 10, you guys had an early bye. Any Todd Torselli stories? Anything you can give me at all? And how is it working with Todd and his staff?
It's great working with Todd. I mean, I can't think. I'm bad at trying to retell stories, but I can tell you that Todd is one of the toughest trainers probably in the league. That guy's got his own, injuries and things that he's dealt with over the course of his.
Yes.
And I know, early on in this season, not even the season, but I think it was like OTAs and training camp stuff like that. Like Todd was rehabbing for himself. I don't even remember exactly what he had going on. I think it was something with his back, but like I just remember seeing him walking around like he looks like he's really going through it. So Todd's a warrior, I know that. But it's great working with him. I feel like he definitely can relate on the pain side and trying to manage all that for himself for sure.
So you got the opportunity to work with Adrian as well
Hmm. Yeah,
before he left.
yeah. Adrian was huge. He actually helped me the year that I was able to receive be a recipient for the Ed Block award. Adrian was helping me through that rehab process. He was kind of like the main guy that I was dealing with, um, in the off season, and then even going leading up like right before the season started, and then throughout the season, kind of helping manage it with my ankle. So yeah, Adrian was huge for me, and it's
Yeah, he's a very good athletic trainer, even better physical therapist. And that's one of my mentees. So I was asking about Adrian. He and I are both from Tampa. I've known Adrian a long time.
yeah. Adrian's awesome.
So Nick, I want to ask you, when you get nominated by your teammates to be the Titans Ed Block Courage Award recipient, what did that mean to you?
It was really it meant a lot. It meant to me it just kind of it was to see that my teammates recognize everything that happened the year prior, or really that off season, because it was end of 20 I hurt, and then I was back 2021, and was able to play. So I was just rehabbing that whole off season. And so for my teammates to know the work that I put in to try to get back and try to help the team meant a lot. It was cool. I feel like it's cool that it's one of those awards that is truly voted on just by your uh, yeah, that was cool. That was probably my favorite part about it.
So,
Nicholas? Oh, go ahead.
my follow up to that is you actually got to come into town
Mhm.
and be a part of the festivities. What was that like? Not only just being a recipient, but then getting to come to Baltimore and be a part of that festivities and getting to be with the kids at St. Vincent's.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, that was my part, was being with the kids at St. Vincent's. It was just, it really, puts your own life into perspective. And all those kids had such good smiles on their faces, and were just in such great spirits, regardless of whatever, circumstances or situations that they were in. Um, that was the main thing that I remember, was just hanging with those kids. Me and my wife really loved it. And it touched us.
Nicholas, being a veteran player now and going through a major injury, I know it made me change the way I played the game and the way I trained, the way I played the game. What has your injuries taught you about your body, and how do you work now versus harder versus smarter? What are some of the things that you're doing now with your body to prevent things from happening?
Yeah, it shows me how like resilient, the human body really is. It's crazy. it's just crazy how like you can kind of learn to compensate in new ways, but still find a way to get the job done. I feel like that's kind of, been part of my career. That first couple years, I was just like, I didn't really feel like I was 100% me, for before the injury, but it was just like finding a way to make it work and stay out there on that field. And now I'm realizing that you gotta be able to invest the time and even sometimes the money too to just really take care of your body. Having, somebody to, come do body work and stuff like that, because you can only do so much when you're in the facility. I feel like I was kind of cheap early on in my career. It seemed like I don't have the disposable income to really just do this and invest like this. Like I'm not LeBron making all this money where it makes sense to put in a bunch of money to stay healthy. But I'm realizing now, like I'm definitely getting older, and you gotta put in the time and the money to take
Good investment.
Nick, you're on a little bit of a heater right now. 4 games in a row with a touchdown. It's been a little bit of a challenging year for the Titans, but how have you felt you've performed this year so far?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with it. If you told me, beginning of this season that I would have 4 straight weeks with a touchdown, probably look at you kind of crazy. Um, we have, you know, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, we had D Hop at the time, Traylon, we had a bunch of really great receivers. So I was like, kind of had my mentality like, all right, let's find a way to make some plays on special teams. And, if I can make a lot of plays on special teams and then maybe, make a few splash plays on offense, maybe some teams will notice and that'll keep me, around for a little bit. But yeah, it's been awesome. It's been a blessing just to be able to have this opportunity. Unfortunately, guys go down. It's just part of the business, and guys get traded, also part of the business. But just trying to take advantage of that opportunity when it comes to me.
Nick, really quick, do you have a welcome to the NFL moment?
Uh, Not really. I never had like a really big hit or anything like that where it was like, oh man, this guy's different. I mean, the first one I can think of, it really isn't Welcome to the NFL, but I remember the first game that I got elevated for. It was the very first game of the season. Corey Davis was a game time decision, and I had just been put on practice squad. I just got cut, and they elevated me like that first week. And then they're like, okay, you might play. So I'm getting ready for this game, thinking like I'm not prepared at all. Like I'm not ready to play the game. But if they call my number, like I'm gonna have to do it. I'm not gonna, back down from the challenge. And then Corey ended up able to play. I had a huge sigh of relief, and we were in Denver up in Mile High. And then the strength coach, Frank at the time, came and told me I had to do conditioning. And I was like, why do I have to do conditioning? This doesn't make any sense. And so he takes me through the whole conditioning workout and flying in the elevation. I never played at Mile High. I never played in the elevation. Like, I'm so glad I didn't play in this game because if I did, I would have been exposed. I think I would have been out the league. So that was the moment, and I'm glad it happened the way it should have or could have.
Who's the most challenging DB you've ever had to go against?
There's definitely been a few. I remember in college, Marshawn Lattimore was one of the toughest. Or really, that was like my welcome to the Big Ten moment. Was going against him as a freshman. But then he's still a really good DB. I feel like now, playing against him last year, and not so much this year, but I remember playing against him last year. And then I'd say Cortland Sutton's also one of if not, the best corner in the league. So those are two guys that come to mind for me. Or not Cortland Sutton. I'm Patrick Surtain. Sorry.
Styles one. I saw he's a big receiver. Okay, I got you.
So Nick, real quick, who is your measuring stick? I got to play with guys like Randy Moss and Chris Carter and Tony Gonzalez, and I learned a lot watching those guys work every day in practice and in games. Who do you look to, or who did you look to kind of model your game after when you were trying to become the best version of you?
Yeah, I remember we've had a bunch of great receivers that have come through. our receiver room over the last 5 years now, it's crazy to think that I'm still here after all this turnover and whatnot. So I feel like I've kind of tried to take bits and pieces from different guys, but like AJ was huge, when I first got in the league, watching AJ work and seeing how he is now. It's like he's a different kind of player. But it was also just like watching him work and how he approached the game and like the details in practice of, he's catching a pass and you can tell he's thinking about like how to pretty much on every play. His mentality, like he might be catching a hitch, but it's like, how do I set myself up to make a guy miss and score every play? So watching him, Julio came through, watching him, the way he took care of his body was one thing. And then, Robert Woods was another guy who was, a veteran at that time coming off of ACL, and watching him and how he worked, it was really impressive. So there's different guys since I've been here, and kind of try to pick and choose, different aspects of their game. And really, I feel like it's the mentality and how they operate as a pro is probably the main things that I take from them.
So Nick, I want to ask you a little bit about Destiny's Rescue. Why are you picking them to be the My Cause, My Cleats this year for you?
Yeah, Destiny Rescue organization. They're based in the U.S., but they really kind of operate globally. Different countries like India, a few different countries in Africa. I know Kenya being one of them, and they in South Africa. They are really kind of all over the place, and they're starting to move in different spots as well. But they're basically like an anti, child trafficking organization. They got put into, I first was introduced to them at a men's Bible study that I'm a part of here in Nashville. And kind of our group, we got connected through, mutual friends, or one of the guys' dads had already kind of done some work with them. And yeah, so the Amy Johns is the lady who came and talked to us, and she just had some stories, and it was just like, it just hit me. I really couldn't explain it. Like, it was just something that tugged at my heart, like hearing the stories of these girls. And it's really just kids all over the country who are getting put in spots, and just having someone to fight for them is really, what we're trying to be and what I'm trying to be about by supporting them and trying to raise money for them so they can do the work that needs to be done. They got operatives all over the country that go and do this work. Not pretty. Try to get kids safe and bring.
All right, Nick, we're going to get you out of here on this. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question.
Okay.
Has Will Levis had you try mayo in coffee yet?
No. He hasn't had me try that yet. I don't know if there's real there's to that. Just knowing Will, I don't think that's a real thing.
I didn't know if that was sort of a bribe to like get more targets from him. I had to ask that question.
Hey.
He does have a streak.
He does. It's work. Obviously, Nick is doing something very well. Nick, thank you for taking some time with us this week. Continued success this year on the field is what we hope for you.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all taking the time with me too.
Have a good one, brother.
All right. For Nick, for DB, for DC, I am Dave Steinwedel. This has been the Ed Block CourageCast.